Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. It's always good to talk when there's a snack out in the room. And so everyone, I'm so jealous, I can't stand it. Those of you who are online, there's fabulous food that's outside. Sorry, you can't have it, I can't either. So my name is Mara Grzanek, and I'm the Family Engagement Coordinator at Stevenson High School in Lincolnshire, Illinois. And I'm here today to talk to you about connecting with families of high school students. I really believe that the key to that is social emotional learning. So what I would like to know is who's in the room. And I'm not going to ask you to get up from your really cozy seats, but I do know that there's some community-based organizations here, schools here. Just for a show of hands, how many people are community-based organizations? Oh, most of you. Okay, anybody from schools? Great. So I really hope that this conversation is going to be something that's useful to you, but I'm really hoping that through our discussions and through feedback, I may be able to learn a lot from you, and I hope that you can take something away from this today. So March of 2020, the world changed. Instruction changed. Collaborations changed. Our whole worlds felt like they fell apart for educators. But for our families, the world really fell apart because they were asked to take up much of the processes that we as professionals deal with during the day. As part of our processes, when the world shut down, we put a lot of pressure on our families. And in the education realm, at least in my school, our families no longer were asking for discussions on what might happen in the future. Gee, what might your child want to do when they get out of high school? Or how might your child be better on social media? They were saying, not anymore. That's not okay for us. We want to know what to do right now. How do I support my student, my child, or my teen, or the person that's in my care right now? So we had to really change, because what happened was the adults in our teens' world went from saying, how was your day, to how can I help you with your day? What can I do to help you manage your day? And that's a gigantic shift for the families that we dealt with, because it changed the way they looked at instruction, right? So while the students were doing class, how do you manage your time? How do you make good decisions? How do you think about how the other people in the family are feeling? How do you do all these other things that are sort of done in organizations as part of the written or unwritten curriculum? When the pandemic happened, we had to help our students maintain relationships and maintain themselves. And we had to help families help them do that. So while educators and the professionals from organizations have always seen the families of our students as vital components of who they are and their development, what we then had the opportunity to do was to think differently and say, yeah, great, educators, in my case, we're all educators, have a really deep understanding of pedagogy and how to help a student understand a content area. But we don't have the background knowledge and the expertise that the family does in that particular student. We can say, teenagers are generally X, or these students are generally Y, but we don't have the expertise that the family does. So what happened was in March of 2020, when our families were saying, hey, we need your help, we then were able to sit back and say, oh, this is an opportunity to change drastically how we see our families in the education system. We had an opportunity to collaborate with them in a way that we had never thought of before at the high school level, and ask them for their participation in a way that they were also not used to participating, at least in our school, at least the way we were. So today, we are going to, and I'm not offended for those of you who work in community organizations, if you finish your snack and leave. We're going to talk about how do we connect families with the social emotional learning community, and how do we cultivate their awareness through creating a family engagement process that is school-based and incorporates school practices that also provides families with social emotional learning opportunities. So what I'd like to ask you now, regardless of whether you work in a school or not, if you're at a table, or if you're not at a table, write down who in your school, or do you have someone in your organization and you're in your school who is dedicated to doing family engagement? Not like, oh, we do it as part of our practice. Do you have a family engagement person, like a human? While you do that, I'm going to take my scarf off because how many of you, show of hands, have a person who just deals with family engagement? You do? Is that you? Has one person who's like, that's all they do. And what's your grade level? Yeah, what's the level of the school? Elementary. Who else? Anybody else have a dedicated family engagement? You do? And what, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I don't think I can leave the stage though, because I think I'm being simulcast. Oh, 5 to 18. Oh, awesome. And there's a person like me there. That's you. I love that. That's terrific. So when you have a family engagement person, those of you who do, when they walk in the room, sometimes people go, oh, the family engagement person's here. And sometimes they go, oh, the family engagement person's here. But most often they say, oh, the family engagement person here. Because we usually generally look at our families as people that we want to have collaborate with us when we're ready for them to collaborate with us. But how do we think differently about really bringing them into part of the process and part of the constant ongoing education? So I'm the family engagement coordinator at Stevenson High School, and that is located in the northern suburbs of Chicago. We are a very large school of 4,400 students. We're increasingly diverse. Right now we have 61 home languages spoken in our school, and 97% of our students go on to post-secondary education. So as you can imagine, it is a high achieving, success-driven school that is based in collaboration. We're a professional learning community, so collaborating with one another is part of who we are and how we work with one another. We very, very infrequently is there a human in our school that is sort of siloed, right? So even though I am the only person that is dedicated to family engagement, I don't work on my own. I work in collaboration with our student services department That incorporates our counselors, social workers, deans, and um, psychiatrists or psychologists, excuse me. I also work with our department heads on their instructional practices and then the administration of the school. We also have a number of opportunities in our school for families to collaborate, to contribute to the school community. The way they do that is anytime we have like a steering committee for anything, you know, schools, they love a committee. So we have our fair share of committees, and anytime we have a committee, there's a parent component on every one of those committees. Our superintendent and our principal have monthly meetings for families. They have monthly breakfasts from 7 to 8:30 in the morning, where families can come, and literally there is no agenda. They just come and they're like, what do you want to talk about? But that's also not family engagement. I participate in all of them. I am constantly at school. It's good that I have grown children, but that's not family engagement to me. When we talk about family engagement programming, we talk about it in a way that asks families to be contributors and partners in our community and not consumers of our product. And that's really important because, as I said, we have a very high international community, and we have a very high success rate of our students. And so it could be very easy for our families to move into the district and be like, great, let me know when they get into, you know, whatever school of their choice. But we don't really try to do that. We really try very hard to collaborate with them as partners in our community. So now I'd like you to take a moment, and for those of you who are sitting with someone, if you're not, just jot down, because I'm going to ask you to go back to this. What does social emotional learning look like in your community? And some people don't call it social emotional learning because the term social emotional learning has gotten some influences on it as of late. So just take a minute and talk at your table about, when you think about social emotional learning, what do you think about in your community? I'm sorry. Can I walk out here? Can I walk out here? I'm just listening. Sorry. Do you have something? Does your school do social? Really? Wow. Really? Because the parents don't come? So, oh, sorry. I think I have to stay up here. Sorry, guys. So I'm going to bring you back around. I just heard a couple of people say social emotional learning is sort of growing and developing in their communities. Some people have said, there's none of it in my community. Does anybody want to share out what social emotional learning is? And yes, ma'am. It's not in your community. You don't see it in your community. How many people don't really see it in their community? You're like, what? That was me before the pandemic. I'm not kidding you. We have a director of social emotional learning. I was like, so what do you do? I had no idea. But what happened in the pandemic was what we use at our school is a framework put out by the Collaborative for Academic Social Emotional Learning, or CASEL. And CASEL is conveniently located in Chicago, but that's not why we use them. This is their framework for social emotional learning, and you'll see at the center of it, there are 5 parts. The 2 orange parts are sort of soft skills, management skills for the self-awareness and self-management. And then the green parts are like, how do you deal with other people, social awareness and relationship skills. And then the yellow one is decision-making. These are all skills that when we talk with families, we say that the skills around, the skills that are broken out in the CASEL competencies are like the skills that you need for success. Some people call them soft skills. If you're looking up CASEL, it's CASEL.org. And what I really like about this is that it calls out families and caregivers as a part of the learning team that supports the student. But I'm going to tell you this also, and I kind of feel like maybe I'm among friends in a family conference. I don't agree with where that ring is. I actually feel that that ring should be right next to the center ring, and the schools should be next. The classroom should be next, and the schools after that, because it is my contention that the families have an extraordinary amount of influence on the students, positive or negative, but the families have an extraordinary amount of influence on their teens. And so what I have here are the CASEL competencies that are drawn out. And I do have a QR code for those of you who want to sort of bookmark those for yourselves. But if you look at the CASEL competencies and each of them that are sort of highlighted in the different colors, you'll see that there are sub-bullets underneath them. And if you just look at those bullets underneath, and remember that when I started talking, I started this talk with March of 2020, which was, oh my gosh, the world is like, right, nobody even knew what we were dealing with, and everybody had to stay home. I don't know how it was where you're from, but in Illinois, we were all going home for 2 weeks, and then we were going home for 2 months, and then we weren't going to see each other until Christmas. And then, well, you could come back in a virtual hybrid kind of weird setting for the rest of that 2020-21 school year. And even last year, we were spitting into vials. It was really, really something extraordinary where I'm from. But when you look at those sub-bullet points and you think about the development of a teenager, which is what we deal with, 14 to 18, you think about, is it valuable for someone to examine prejudice and biases? Maybe. Do we want our students to be able to manage their emotions? Perhaps. Do we want them to be able to understand and consider someone else's perspective when they're working with someone? Could be. So what we were finding was that when we talked about the competencies, whether we called them out as CASEL competencies or social emotional learning, or we didn't, they were all things that we wanted our teens to have as they ventured past Stevenson High School and into whatever post-secondary institution they were going to. Because remember, 97% of our students go on to college. I also wanted to bring up the National Association for Family, School, and Community Engagement. This group was originated at Harvard, and in June of this year came out with their own family engagement standards. Is anybody aware of NAFSC? they call themselves something, but I go to their, like I belong to their, like they talk. But if you look at sort of the big bars across the top of their national standards, they ask institutions to reflect about who their families are, right? Who are your families? Connect with those families in real and authentic ways to get to know those families and collaborate with them so that they're working alongside of them in their institutions. And for those of us who work in family engagement, and those of you who have family engagement coordinators, that's kind of what you want to do, right? Like, that's the basics. You want to get to know your families, figure out where they're coming from, what's their culture, how can you honor their culture, how can you work with them equitably to make sure that they have what they need so they can best support the people that you are working together with to support their growth and development. So I didn't want to get through this talk without letting you know the frameworks from which we work in Castle, and I personally like these national standards. So the components of social emotional learning at Stevenson High School, it is fully embedded into our curriculum. In the classroom, it is integrated into our instructional practices, into our assessment, into our discussions, so that we can create communities and routines and rituals where our students feel seen, heard, and valued in an equitable way. If it sounds a lot like our social emotional learning is blending a lot with diversity, equity, and inclusion, it does. We have a director of diversity, equity, and inclusion, we have a director of social emotional learning, and we have me, and the three of us work intensively together. We also work with our response to intervention coordinator. We have the same boss. We meet regularly together to talk about and plan out collaborative, seamless instructional practices and ideas for when we're going to send something with our students, how are we going to then share it and collaborate and connect with our families around it, right? So social emotional learning is baked into our school practices. It is also a part of our school community. Wellness is a part of our school community. And I'm going to tell you that this is what happened before the pandemic. Oh, we're really worried about kids' wellness. Oh, yeah, we really want you to be well. We really want, now it's like wellness, capital W. Before, I'm not kidding you. You know those time wheels, like how do you spend your time and you divide a circle into 24 hours of the day? We make our students do that when they do class, like when they do course selection. How are you doing your days? How much time do you have? How many co-curriculars are you in? How many sports are you in? How much time is it going to take for you to do homework? How much time are you sleeping? And it cannot be a badge of courage or a badge that you wear that, oh, I only slept 3 hours last night, because we hear that a lot. But we also hear the stress from the families saying, right, 97% graduation rate, you have to take 5 AP, that's advanced placement, so college level classes. You have to take 5 because kid down the street took 5 and he got into the University of wow. So that's the culture. And I know that's not the culture for everybody, but that's our culture. That's what we deal with. So we really take a step back and say, right, but your student can't be in the marching band and on the football team and play the piccolo and run student council and take 5 AP classes. There's no way. So you can't do that. You have to be authentic about that. You have to have that discussion. We also have to worry about social emotional needs. Now, where do the families come in on this? Social emotional learning supported in class. Got it, not a problem. Done during the pandemic, unbelievably. These teachers were so incredibly creative, and they have included those practices and built on those practices now in instruction, now that we're back. But what about social emotional wellness and the social emotional needs of our students? Because frankly speaking, and I think I can say this in this room confidently, sometimes the home environment is a challenge for our students just in and of itself. So how are we helping those students? That's where the consistent and constant collaboration with families can come in. I can't say to a family, hey, this is how you support, I don't know, like algebra BC. They may not understand that. I don't even know if that's a class. But I can say, this is how you help your student manage their time. I can say, this is how you can talk with your student around making responsible decisions around what classes they're going to take, right? So during the pandemic, as I said to you, I worked closely with our director of social emotional learning and our director of student services, and we knew that our families were asking for a lot of support. We knew they needed support. But again, I don't know what it was like in your environments, but you know, nobody knew what was happening. And so tensions were super high everywhere in the whole country. So all you had to do was like turn on the news and you heard about, you know, all the anger that was out there among families, or how am I supposed to do this? And now I have to teach second grade, and what can I do? So what we said was, we're going to be a consistent source of knowledge for families. So during the pandemic, and I only bring this up to you just to sort of let you know how things have changed. We said, we're gonna focus things on social emotional learning, on these core competencies: self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. Because we know that only some of that is being done through classroom work, and we know that these students still need these skills. They still need to develop these skills because we don't know what's around the bend. So what we started saying was, we're going to do short, predictable, understandable, clear sessions. During the pandemic, time was irrelevant. They were half an hour long. We would all three of us be on every day at noon for half an hour, and we would talk about some, you know, take a walk at what's the power of walking in nature. I can't tell you how many times I talk to families about the power of taking a walk. Did you know that if you take a walk 20 minutes a day, sorry, I just have to divert, 20 minutes a day, if you go outside for 20 minutes a day, it literally has a positive impact on your social, emotional, your being, your wellness. Just thought I'd let you know. 20 minutes, I'm telling you, just 20 minutes, it's the number, the golden minutes is 120 minutes. 220, so you can do 6 days a week, right? Take a day off. So we did that for half an hour. Then when we came back, we shimmied it down to 15 minutes, right? Like last year it was 15 minutes. Now it looks a little bit different. But what it was it was an opportunity for families to get together, talk to one another, and talk to us around a subject matter, right? A skill that they needed to work on, short, predictable, doable. Hey, do this. This is a way, right? Walk outside for 20 minutes a day. Well, what am I supposed to do? Just listen. Give your student a prompt. Give your teen a prompt. What'd you like about today? And then just walk and listen. Then shut your mouth. Let your team talk. Because then what you're doing is building trust. And you need to lay the foundation for trust every day if you think that you're going to be in a trusting relationship sometime down in the future, right? So short, predictable, doable, student-centered, in collaboration with student services and the director of social emotional learning. I'm going to take a pause and ask you, those of you who work in, so now that you know what the social emotional competencies are, right? Like, here, let me move back. Here we go. They're right here. In any of these fields, do you collaborate with your families around this content area? Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, or decision-making? Is there anything that you do with your, that's not like, I'm going to teach you how to do my program in your house. Just having these discussions. I wish I had like a Mr. Microphone so I could hand it around. Yes, ma'am. Okay, I'm gonna walk down people in the sound thing. I don't want. Oh, so, okay. Right. And what are they doing? What are they saying they do? That you have discussions with families or you have, and then you. Mhm. In their home. And then do you have discussions? Like, do you have planned out discussions around these?
Yeah, because we're trying to figure out like what kinds of skills or interventions
Yeah.
help strengthen some of the places where they might be struggling.
For the student, where the student, you try to figure out where the student might be struggling. Or the family. Okay, I have a couple slides. Do you ever do stuff with the Search Institute? Search Institute. I'm going to show you a slide on Search Institute. Look up Search Institute. They have really, really good programming. Anybody else? Even if you don't do like SEL in your school, do you have any programs where you kind of talk about these sort of soft skills and the development of these soft skills with your families? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, about having a routine. Yeah, that's huge.
Or doing homework. Oh, no.
Right, a predictable schedule. Thank you.
Yes.
A predictable schedule.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, so sometimes the families will say, okay, I will walk with my kids, for a little bit. And some of them do it. Some of them, it's a little bit harder, but.
Right. But you want that predictability, right? I mean, during the pandemic, why did we all go nuts? Because all of our we're all like supposedly card carrying adults and nobody gave us predictable outcome. Like we didn't know what to expect every day. We didn't know the Dolly Parton songs, Stumble Out of Bit. Sorry, I'm not singing.
Yes.
Not singing.
Yeah, and I had a little girl, and actually that worked with routines was that she was having a hard time going to school.
Right.
And so I said to the mom, you have to have consistency.
Right.
And so she started,
Right.
but then she took her out 2 days to go to a doctor's appointment and we went backwards again.
Right. And I mean, and for some of our families, like even in all the communities, for some of us, our routines aren't even like, think about the luxury of having a set routine. I wake up at 6 o'clock, I turn on the coffee, I get in my car, I go to work. Pardon me, I get home from work at whatever time. Imagine if you're a shift worker and you know your schedule every week. You find out your schedule on Tuesday or Thursday, or you pick up an extra shift. That messes with everything. But for so many of our families, even, they can't, like, really, I have to say, I have to work 3 o'clock every day or from 7 to 3 every day. And your manager goes, well, you can't work here anymore. Or you have to work that extra shift because that's the difference between getting the food on the table that week and not getting the food on the table that week. So sometimes, it's sometimes to say to a family, right, you have to really kind of get to know who are your people and how are they working. And that's where that collaboration comes in. What I found in my work, and this is after, oh my goodness gracious, I'm doing this too. Okay, this is after doing this for a while. Can I stay down here? Do I have to go back up there? Is that my programming takes on about 4 different sort of areas. One is how do you partner with the, right? So remember, we have a lot of new families who do not speak English, or their students have never been in this kind of environment. But because of the environment that we are in, people really actively want to move into the school district, right? I mean, they pay higher rents, they pay higher taxes. Because it's like, right, every family just wants the best they can do for their student. Nobody gets up and says, I don't care. Well, maybe they do. I don't know. I heard a guy in here before and I was shocked. But one is, how do I get involved at Stevenson? How do I connect with you people? How do I understand how to support academics? What do I do to support my student in this high functioning environment? I want my student to get the most out of this place. I want to make sure that what's given to my student is equitable, is what my student needs and they deserve. Also, I want to figure out, how do I support my students' wellness? It is heartbreaking when a family comes and says, my student was referred for services. And I get that because I am the parent of a child on the spectrum. That's why I'm in family engagement. The last thing is career path. Where are they going from this? Where are they going? We are not promising anyone that your child is going to get into the University of Spectacular. We are not. Nobody says that. We are saying we are going to try to help your student be the very, very best they can be. Our motto is success for every student. We truly believe it, we live it, we breathe it. We want it more than anything. I would say I want success for every family because I don't think anybody comes into our school environment and their path through Stevenson, whether it's a day or 4 years, it is impactful. And when that student graduates or finishes their term at Stevenson, there are tears and joy and celebration, and that's a family celebration. That's not just, Junior, you did it all on your own. The whole family can tell you what finals felt like the first semester of freshman year, forever. So what you see up here, wow, that is so small, sorry. What you see up there is last spring's programming. Remember when I told you it was a half-an-hour sessions, then it was 15 minutes? I started publishing what was going on every month. I no longer do this. I think I have to go back to it. When I was like reviewing to do this, I was thinking, why don't I do that anymore? So what I did was in January, I started working more of our leaders with our diverse communities, our English language, our multilingual families, we now call them. And I found out our families wanted predictability. They wanted to know what was I going to talk about live for 15 minutes. But what else I did was I did things in one certain, like in a theme. So January was starting the semester off again, right? So we're a high school. February was finding learning supports. March was getting involved and friendships. April was starting to get ready for the summer and what are you going to do during your time off and how are you going to spend all your time in the summer. And then May was really wrapping up a review of learning supports and how am I getting my student ready for like summer school or taking final learning experiences, that's what we call them now. And so what's happened now this year is, so initially it was just, I'm going to do these little things and I'm going to have a document where I have links to like it was literally a Google Drive of the videos of all of the conversations I had during the pandemic. Then last year, someone said to me, well, why don't you post them on YouTube? And I was like, oh, that's great. What a great idea. So then now I have a YouTube channel. And I used to do the videos and then I would post them on YouTube. And then someone said to me, because right, I work in a collaborative environment, I am so suspect. And if any of you were like, you know what else you should do? I'd be like, yeah, great, I'm going to do that. Another person said to me, 15 minutes is too long. 15 minutes is too long. You ready? Under 2 minutes. Do you know that you can only post to Instagram a movie that's less than 2 minutes? So I'm going to tell you something. That's pretty much what you can do. I'm like an Arby's commercial, like all the time for family engagement. I'm the Arby's community commercial for family engagement. Or I do those squares and I use Canva And you can see some examples of helping your students build routine. Sorry, helping your students build routines, connect with Stevenson, those little squares up there. And so now I have a Facebook page for SHS Family Engagement, and I have an Instagram account for SHS Family Engagement. And what we do is, I don't know if any of you all find this too, but nobody wants to come. Now that we've shown people Zoom, nobody's coming to school anymore. Nobody's coming to school anymore. We have, so 97%, let me reframe, 97% going post-secondary, right? So we start talking about that freshman year because I'm going to tell you, our feeder schools, we are just a high school district. So our feeder schools start talking about, you know what Stevenson wants, you know what Stevenson wants, and they start the crazy in 7th and 8th grade, right? These kids are not through their bar mitzvahs. We have a lot of Jewish kids. And, you know, they haven't even gone through like puberty, half of them, and they're worrying about how are they going to apply for school? What are they going to do for the ACT or the SAT? And I'm like, back off. And then they graduate them and they send them to us all full of all their anxiety. So, but we do talk about it and we have meetings once a year. Well, now what we do, we used to have 1,000 people in the audience for those pre-pandemic. We just had them, 42 people in the audience, 700 online. 42 in the audience, but we use Zoom. So when you use Zoom, Zoom has that translator. They give you that, the narrative of everything that was said. So all the ums and the foibles and all that come with it, but you can take that and you can put it into a Google Translator, or better yet, you can put it into a Word doc and translate it in a Word doc, because Google stops at 5,000 characters. And you can use subtitles. So now every single one of our meetings is on my YouTube channel. Not every single one, the ones that I can get the people to say that they'll give me the transcripts. And I transcribe them into our 7 largest languages. And I'm just taking data from that, because I have a lot of colleagues of mine who say, no one's going to look at that. No one cares. No one sees it. Who cares? So my focus clearly this year is on equity for our families who are not proficient in English or don't feel comfortable in English. Like, why would I take them out of having those conversations? All it does is make them more anxious and creates problems and anxiety for them where there shouldn't be. Give them the information. It's not a secret. So I wanted to show these because last year, in Illinois, we have something called a BPAC. Does anybody have BPACs in other states? So in Illinois, if you have 20 families who identify themselves as English learners and they don't identify proficiency in English in the home, and you have 20 families in a certain language, you have to have a parent advisory council for that language at your school, okay? And they don't have to have their own, but you have to be able to hear them and hear what they say they need out of to support their student while they're going to your school, which is like the most tremendous thing that ever happened to me as family engagement coordinator, because it really transformed my work, because I started working with the woman who's running our BPACs, and I was like, hey, how can I help you? That's what I do. I tell everyone I'm Susie Snowflake at my school, because all I want to do is coordinate with everybody. And I'm like, hey, how are you? What are you doing? How can I help you? What can I do? Which means a lot of really late nights for me. I do feel like I'm a car salesman half the time, but I'm happy to be a car salesman, because she was like, well, I have these monthly meetings and they don't know how to support their students. And I'm like, oh, January was all about how to start the semester off right. Let me just translate all that into Spanish for you. Oh, February was about how to access supports. Let me translate into Spanish for you. So that's where all that translating came up. And now we have a wonderful web designer who figured out how to use, like, we use the Google Translate in our website. So there's some way that you can, and if anybody wants to know, I'll give you John's email. Just email me. I'll digitally introduce you to John. He uses some kind of widget where there's drop-down menus. So everything that we do in our school now can be translated. It always has been able to be, but we really push it now to say to our families, like, everything. So everything I do, every letter, every talk I give, I distill down to like 10 most important points so that they don't have to like sit through an hour. And I put it up on the website so that our families understand. So it's all well and good to sit back. This is Search Institute, ladies, what I was telling you. It's all well and good to say, oh, you should be giving your families all of this understanding and all this knowledge. But I'm going to tell you, one of the things that I tell our families a lot, and they don't, and it's hard, and I have kids in their 20s, and the struggle is real. How do you move from being a parent to being like sort of the guide on the side? How do you move from being the parent of a 14-year-old to being the parent of a 21-year-old, right? Because fundamentally, teenagers, they don't like us. I got to tell you, they don't come around. You know, when they say like, oh, when they're 22, they come around. I'm here to tell you it doesn't happen. I'm living it right now. She's 26. She's getting around to it. But Search Institute out of Minnesota has something called the Developmental Relationship Framework. And these are the 5 components of the Developmental Relationships Framework. And we have used this with our counselors, with our teachers, and with our families. I tell our families, you intentionally have to move from being the manager of your child's life to the mentor in your child's life. And every day you are with your teen, you have to take time to listen to them objectively. They will test you. They will test you. And they will test you. And they will see how far they can test you. But I tell them all the time, you are laying the foundation at 14 for 20. And so it's easy to say that, but excuse me, what kind of practices can we give our families? Sorry, I didn't want to make that go off. Where they have sort of a roadmap to how do I build that? And this is one way. I'm not saying it's the only way, it's just the way that works for me. Express care, challenge growth, provide support, share power, and expand possibilities. And one of the things that we did with our faculty was we said to them, we talked about this, we introduced it. And we said, rank these. What do you do the most? What do you do the least? What do you think they thought they did the most? Pardon me? Challenge growth. Express care. Our counselors were express care. Our teachers were challenge growth. Our families were what? What? Take a walk through your neighborhood. Talk about all the jobs that you see. If you live in an urban neighborhood, you're the luckiest family ever. Because you get to see all different people doing all different things, all different times of the day. And you can talk about, what do you suppose they need to do to get to that part? What do they do? Walk up to them, say, what do you do? What are you doing? Why are you doing that? What did you have to do to get to that point? Do something to your friends. Hey, this is my friend, Pete. Pete owns his own race car store. Pete didn't go to college. Pete drives, race cars. We have a guy his name isn't Pete, but he works race cars and he's the coolest human ever. And he will happily say, I didn't go to college. I went to trade school. He's the coolest human. I love him. And I'm not dissing that. I'm saying, like, it's not just introduce them to the doctors and the lawyers and this is what I want to be. Because the more people they introduce their their students to. The more they expand their possibilities, the more they talk about different things, the more exposure the student gets, right? But if you're intentional about having these discussions with families, then they have a roadmap. Then they're like, oh yeah, okay, now I know what I'm supposed to do and I know how I'm supposed to do it with this human who does not like me and walks in their house and slams the door. I'm going to tell you the biggest discussion I have with families at Stevenson High School is, why does my student walk in the door and slam the door and I never get to talk to them? Because you got to tell them. They don't want to come to dinner. Well, no, there can be rules in your household and they can come to dinner and you can throw out a question. Get some question cards. That's how we do, like before we do course selection. We have something called Let's Talk About Your Future. There's no homework at that time. And the families get question cards. And we tell them, and we have families who say they use them all year long. What's your favorite thing? What's your not least favorite thing? Who's the teacher you like the most? Who was your teacher that you liked the most? All those kinds of experiences. What was your classroom like that was different than my classroom? All those kinds of things. So what has happened in family engagement at Stevenson High School is that family engagement has taken on a completely new, and I am the choir. I am the choir director. I am the whole choir. I build the robes. I wear all of the robes, every single, I'm the bell choir. I'm the whole thing, all in one person. I am Susie Snowflake. I will talk to anyone. I will collaborate with anybody. Believe me, I have sidled up to the football coaches. Hey, what are we doing with the sports boosters? They don't like me. No, I think they like me. Whatever. It's irrelevant. But what has happened is, by bringing our families into the conversation in a way that is tangible and a doable way, has invited them into a conversation where previously they could have felt unwelcome. And frankly speaking, a lot of people in our community, the educator side of the community, felt they were unwelcome. You bring your kid to us, we're going to get them ready for college, 97%, look at our success rate, see you later. Know your place, right? That's not your lane. We talk about lanes a lot in my school. Get out of my lane. No. Welcome the families into your lane, but give them something to do. Use a framework so you're not just throwing it out there and saying, hey, I think you should do this. Here's some frames. We use the CASEL competencies. I chose, and frankly speaking, I sidled up to the social emotional learning coordinator and student services because I was like, okay, that seems really doable to me for family engagement. And it was a time when every time you turned on the TV, nobody knew what was going on. It was crazyville. So I used that to start moving forward. Then I started hearing, well, wait a minute. How am I supposed to be their parent? Search Institute. We do a lot of surveys of our students. We do a lot of student surveys, ask them, how do you feel? How do you feel? Do you have an adult that you trust in the community? We use Panorama Education for that. Panorama. They have nationally normed surveys that you can do in your school or in your environment that are normed through everywhere. Everything from sports teams all the way through, they'll go all the way to elementary school. So our consortium schools use them. So then we know what we're seeing like, oh my God, this is terrible, or, oh, that's how everyone's feeling, right? But what we have found is, we have found a way to partner with our families. Yes, I am a department of one, but I'm really only a department of one because I'm moving the chains and I'm moving the philosophical ideals in our environment to be one of our team includes the families of our students. Our team includes the home environments of our students, and they are an integral part of our team. We are a professional learning community. And if we are going to work collaboratively as a team, then we have to include those families. If we are going to invite them into the educational environment, we have to use common, explicit language that's not dumbed down to this is what the families can understand, Bring them up to our level. A rising tide lifts all ships. Bring them up, explain to them why we are saying this is what it is. And then ask them for their cultural feedback. What do you do in your families? How do you do this? Our families have started to say to us, you need to recognize our holidays. Do not give our Indian students homework on Diwali. Understand that Dia de los Muertos is a gigantic holiday for us, and we are not going to do homework. And some of our students are going to dress up. And you know what? This year, we had people in our community dress up for Dia de los Muertos. Our Indian students wore their garb for Diwali. It was the best thing ever. I hope it continues on. I hope our Chinese students celebrate the new year and we see some red envelopes. Just saying, I know what's in those red envelopes, but it's a partnership. It's a collaboration. So now we're together and we're seen as one. Anybody have any ideas for how they might modify SEL in their community from having this conversation or listening to me blather on? Yes, you can't hear me? For really? Can you hear me now? Oh, that was bad. I said some really great things just now. I'm sorry you didn't hear them. What? Yeah, I just asked, how would you change your SEL from listening to this conversation? I'm really sorry that I wasn't loud enough for you. I apologize. I do want to thank you all for your time. I know that this was, yes, ma'am. What's your question? How do you start an SEL? You know what I would do is I would take the CASEL competencies, go to CASEL, CASEL.org, print out those competencies, go to their site. They have a lot of resources on CASEL. Okay. You know what I would do first is look at your community and say what structures in your community foster the development of the skills that are included in the CASEL competencies. And where you want to look is there. You want to look at that. If you use that QR code or just go to the competencies and see how they're broken out, their website is spectacular. It'll break it out. And there are activities in there that you can do in your classroom. And you can start, you don't have to have it embedded right away. You can start it. Like there's places that have like SEL day and you could start there. Just start doing certain things or see if there's a practice that gets people to sort of listen to each other in a different way, or minding themselves, minding their own time. Do an hour wheel with your students if they're older, if you're with your clients or whomever you're working with. If it's a teen, how do you spend your day? What do you do? Or like she left. The lady in the back who was talking about routines. Routines are the most powerful thing in the world. And just like, right, just start little. And then once that becomes something, you get a little foothold, go on to the next thing. Ask your students, you know what, here's the greatest thing. How are you feeling today? How are you feeling today? Ask them to just reflect on how they're feeling. Like what? You're asking me how I'm feeling? What? Yeah, this isn't part of therapy. This isn't part of a session or anything. What are you doing? What one thing really made you feel good about yourself today? What was a challenge today? And how did you get through it? Let them see their own empowerment, their own way of being. Do you know who our students say the most impactful have been at our school? I loved this. Our security personnel. You bet. And they talk to everyone. And there's no bias. They are natural allies. Here's the kicker. All of our security guards are former policemen. That's a kicker. They're all former policemen. We're not a super diverse community, but we do have, our Black and brown kids really have a issue with fitting in. But it's interesting that the people they see them the most are security guards. we're just not going to tell them. I mean, because there's so much there, right? But we knew from our students talking and saying, hey, I don't feel like I have a place. That's how we got our diversity chair. Yes, sir.
So with you pointing that out, that they said the security have been the most impactful, so to speak. And they said you don't plan to tell them. I feel like that's a conversation that y'all would need to have, not to point out, hey, those are policemen,
Right.
more so to break down the barriers and the
100%.
stereotypes behind it.
I agree with you. I agree. And our diversity chair, Dr. Haney, he is the one that's having those. I mean, they're not going to listen to me if I talk to them
I
about
would
it.
agree.
I mean,
I would agree.
they're not listening to me. I know. But but the teachers were like, oh yeah, they're going to say us. And it was a kicker. Like, really, you think they don't,
You're annoying.
man,
not saying
you're not, no, yeah, right? Like, it's like, pfft. Anyone else have any questions or anything? Please contact me. Get in touch with me. I am from a PLC. Yeah, it'll pop, this page will pop up from, and I don't know if I downloaded it and put it in a Google Drive, but castle.org is CASEL.org. And then, so my 3 places outside of Stevenson that I told you about were the Search Institute, Panorama Education for questions, like surveys, Panorama Education, and the Castle Institute, CASEL.org. And there's a lot of free resources for all of them.